Emma's Universe podcast.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
Emma's Universe podcast.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
Emma's Universe podcast.
Hello and welcome to Emma's podcast. Yes. Welcome to my world of, we have no idea what we're going to be talking about today, but we're going to be talking about something. So it's one of those moments in life you just have to go with the flow. I like that, going with the flow. Being determined on where you want to go, not taking any prisoners, aka setting up your boundaries, and just ensuring that you're in the right direction where you want to go. And if you're not, then refocus your attentions and intentions and move forward into the right directions. That's what it's all about. The life of 1,000, the life of not using shortcut, because when you use shortcuts, people want to use shortcut. Let's talk about shortcuts for a minute. Then you get the surprise of a lifetime, then your shortcut coming the long road. Shortcut never brings you where you need to be. And I have seen many people who have used shortcut thinking it was the shorter road, the quickest way, and it ended up to be the longest way because using shortcuts come with a high price. So when you are doing this, and I'm seeing it a lot in businesses, when you get somebody who's doing accounting and decide to cut somebody, some of the positions, and they are based on salary and say, well, if we remove that salary, we're done with it. If you're looking at often, when you're looking at layoff, it always goes with IT and it goes with accounting. I've seen it both ways quite often. And that's something that when you have a business, you need to understand what are the black holes. And the black holes, one of them is IT. There is no return on investment in looking at IT. It doesn't profit. It helps you to keep your company robust, safe, with the development and the support of people in IT. It makes it life easier if you have IT that is on site. I was Thomson Reuters. When I was at Thomson Reuters, I remember then they had a cafe downstairs. So when you wanted to update or fix some of your computer, you would go downstairs, bring your computer, sit down at the cafe, quote unquote, and have those guys looking into it, which to me is what it should be. When I have dealt with companies that, it was the most interesting part of it too, was when they outsourced to India, then you had to go through the tier 1, 2, and 3. 3 was on site, but you had to call first. Then you have to talk to somebody who will go through a script, and you have to follow their script. And then when they could not resolve that after 2 or 3 hours, and that happens to me, I lost a half a day, literally a half a day. And then they will log the ticket to the tier 2. Tier 2 will do the same thing all over again, which is very frustrating and could not even fix the issue at all. Then finally you could have access to somebody that would come on site. It was a lot and a waste of time, especially when you spend a day on fixing something and you cannot even do your job because they take over your computers. They have no idea what they're doing, and they can make it worse at the end of the day as well. And that happens to me as well. So it's just lovely when you do things and things doesn't work the way it's supposed to be. So that was one thing. So I learned the technique to do this. I want to talk to my IT. I want to talk to my IT. I want to talk. And I repeated over and over and over and over. And for like 20 minutes, the guy was on the phone. I said, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to my IT here on site. I want to talk to my IT on site. And I repeated over and over and over and over. Guess what? They allowed me to do it because I refused to have their help. I remember one year, I even had somebody who spent hours with IT on the phone to fix a simple little thing. And I passed by her desk. And she was struggling, and I'm like, "What is your problem?" And she explained to me, and I'm looking at her computer. I went in there, fixed it in less than a minute, and she was in there for several days. Could not work, couldn't do what she was supposed to do. It was just frustration. So when you look at companies and they want to cut corners, they want to, save quote unquote money, then sometimes outsourcing is not a good idea. It doesn't work, or it makes life a little, I will say, difficult, especially if you outsource overseas, which makes it even more difficult when you're trying to do your work and you're being blocked because now you have to talk to people who follow their script. So no blaming them at all for following the script, but what a waste of time. So I don't know. I was thinking about it this morning when I let my mind wanders, and I was just thinking about it just before I started to record. And I'm like, yeah, let's talk about cost saving. Let's talk about, making change management, saving money. Well, there is a couple of ways to save money. The smart way and the wrong way. I have seen people being let go and they were in key position, but nobody cares, and expecting others to pick up the slacks, and paralyze companies and making life of other more difficult. So there is ways to approach, and IT, as I said, IT is a black hole. I was thinking about utility world because I wrote about it on my blog for my business on the edg-associate.net, and I talked about the infrastructures as well. A lot of infrastructures for water, sewage are not adequate, and the reason is because there is no return on money. The investment is not there. And people, when you're looking at cities, what they want is tax you left, right, middle, and center because they're hoping for the best. If they're spending money, they want the money back. It's not what's happening with those infrastructures. And that's why you got the situation of Flint, and you got other area within the U.S. who don't even have proper sewage in some of those small towns. They don't even have sewage in small town at all. So you have to looking at the infrastructure and how to maintain it, because those are investment. It's the same with bridges and roads. Those, unless you put a tolls on it, you have to maintain them. The train system here compared to Europe, they have a pretty good railroad system, even better than flying, because every time I took a flight over there, it always been delayed somehow over the rainbow. But when you take, unless they're on strike, but unless you take the train is more reliable and faster and quicker because the way they developed it. Here we're a little bit in the reverse, actually. The airlines are more suitable than the train because of the way they're maintaining the railroad. But you have to think on, and people always think, well, what is the, my investment on revenue, my ROI, my revenue on investment, because we want this, we want the money back. Problem is, in some of the companies, you don't have your money back, and you're never going to get it back from IT. IT is one of the foundation of your business. How to maintain your website safe, how to keep your software up and running, how to get good data from your applications to make decisions based on your sales. So there is a lot of good and positive things, but people never thought, and if you're talking about accounting, people don't even think about, how you impact others. I worked with company where IT was underdeveloped. They were chaotic, and they are They're a pretty good company, but however, their IT and their software and their processes were pretty much archaic. Why? Because it was composed of smaller companies that all merged together, except they never integrated all of them properly because of their system, and every company kept their own system, which at once upon a time, you're going to need to merge every system so everybody can talk together. Data can flow in, and you can get raw data, not from somebody else's Excel spreadsheet that been massaged, but the pure raw data from the system and being able to do your KPI. So I'm thinking about the infrastructure. I'm thinking about what people don't realize what impacts others. And it might not be fair, but you have to think about it because at the end of the day, you understand that those position, those infrastructures needs to be maintained. So it always gonna be a pitfall of money. It's like you're pouring the money in, but there is no revenue. Again, unless you put some tolls on some of the highways like some do, then you have to maintain those roads. You have to maintain the sewage system. You have to maintain the water system. That is important. And we're not going to go into the grid, which is the electrical grid, which is a nightmare on its own because we saw a few years ago what happened when one of the grid went down and how I would say poorly developed the grid has been as well. So it's been very, very interesting to see things happening this way. And as I said, the life of 1,000 is a life of transformation, and we have to look at how can we continue to evolve with what we're doing in our lives. I had a very interesting conversation with somebody else's today, actually, that clarifies some of the things that needed to be clarified as well. But it's very enlightening when you get some insight as well and understand how it works. I'm still extremely interested about desalination because we are looking at, Saudi Arabia, who had 2 now or 3 desalination plant. And top of the art, they have contracted, and they had contractors over Europe building their desalination plants. I'm still thinking about Hawaii and Honolulu with the situation of those fuel tanks that have been there for over 40, 50 years, and they're still leaking fuel into the water ground map, which is terrifying because that contaminate the entire island. But hey, who's going to be talking about it unless there's another leak happening? Those tanks will never go off the ground because they're in a great stage of decay. I don't think they got emptied. But what is questionable on this one is why don't we set up the desalination plant there? Yes, people are going to say, well, but the view in Honolulu is so beautiful. We do not want to have it defaced by those desalination plants. But if we're utilizing those plants, then we can bring fresh waters to those people. Well, bring fresh water, which will be safe for everyone living on the island. That's one thing. The other thing, too, and I do know somebody else's as well, who have created with one of his businesses, a way to purify water and in a safer way as well, utilizing chemicals, not in a bad way for those chemicals, but enzyme and chemicals that will clean up those polluted waters. But again, who's doing what and how and why not? Because so far, no resolution has been happening, but the water is still contaminated. The water has fuel. And if you're looking at it, people got sick on the base and outside of the base as well. So think about what can we do, and even Hong Kong was the first one to have a desalination plant. So when you're looking around the world, and that's what I did on some of my expose and my writing that I did, was to look at what other countries are doing it and how do they do that. Because when you're looking at islands like Hong Kong and Maui, and you can looking at the Bahamas, you can looking at other Saudi Arabia over there as well. All of those countries that have very torrid, harsh climate, extremely hot, where you don't have that much water coming in. How do we make it better for the people living in there? And that's what we have to look at. Looking at our infrastructures, and that's not only the only problem here in the US, it's around the world as well, because all of the, what is interesting is realizing when you move from one country to the others, you think your country suck at a lot of things, and you go to the next one, and you're like, holy crap, different country, but same way to run things. And that's exactly what's happening with our infrastructures, with everything else. So what will be the best approach in the world to be able to have the right infrastructures, but also really showing that evolution that we need, and also embracing who we truly are, but also making sure that, infrastructure is something, it's a money pit. There is nothing else we can say than a money pit, and we have to maintain it one way or the others. So how do we do, and how can we improve that? How can we bring fresh waters to some of the community that we feels like we're living in a third world? Here in the U.S., I'm not even talking about in Africa or anywhere else. In the U.S., there is some areas that are very extremely poor. Then cities are not connected with the people. So how do we do this? How do you bring in infrastructure or something healthy for people? That is one of the biggest questions we can ever have in this world. But we have to look also, and I'm going to go back again, I'm jumping from topic to the others, but looking back at not only infrastructure, but looking at how company runs and taking shortcuts, starting to, we're going to outsource everything because we're going to save money. Look in the long run how much the cost is to move things, because it costs you more money to move things out, and how quickly can you get the response back from those outsourced company. That's something you need to understand. There is a lot of layers when you're looking at saving money that a lot of people don't understand, because it's like developing a software. And I talked several years ago, it takes $500,000 to run, to develop a software. When you bring a new software, about $500,000, $250,000 to $500,000. And that is the previous version. It's not even the new version, it's the preview version. So the question at the end of the day is, what do you do with everything you've got and how to make it better? But be realistic when you want to use shortcuts by outsourcing. Every country have a different way of life. Their GDP is different, but you have to look at how do we adapt to our changes and how can we continue to move forward in a more efficient way, I would say. So, all my love, guys, that was our Monday talk, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Where do we go from here?
Emma's Universe Podcast.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
Emma's Universe Podcast.
Stargazer.